Good evening. Welcome to the Truth Act Community Forum, which is item 19 on today's agenda. We'll begin with the chairwoman's remarks, and as we've done today, I will post them up on the screen here and we'll read them aloud for the record. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, her statement reads, I would like to welcome all of you today for this very important forum. The Truth Act Forum is an opportunity for San Diego County residents to participate, advocate, and address the board and the sheriffs about the need for transparency on the engagement between the County of San Diego sheriffs and the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. In 2016, now Attorney General Rob Bonta introduced AB 2792, titled California Transparent Review of Unjust Transfers and Holds, or TRUTH, and the Truth Act went into effect on January 1st, 2017, and provided three major changes to our current system. Today, we are convened here in accordance to the third major change caused by the Truth Act, which requires a local legislative body to hold a community forum annually if local law enforcement allows ICE access to any individual. Today, our community forum will have the following process. First, Sheriff Martinez and her team will give a presentation. Second, we will invite the public to make public comment on the presentation. After public comment, we will invite Sheriff Martinez and her team to answer any questions from public comment. Third, we provided a space for community members to submit questions prior to this meeting for the sheriff to answer. The clerk will read these questions from the community, and Sheriff Martinez and her team will answer them at the dais. Finally, the supervisors on the dais will have the opportunity to make comments and ask questions to Sheriff Martinez and her team. We appreciate the public and our community partners for helping provide important questions on a subject I and my residents care deeply about. As a board, we have made a commitment to prioritize that immigrants and refugees in San Diego will be treated with dignity and humanity. Now I'd like to hand it over to Sheriff Martinez and our county team for the presentation. We'll first turn it over to Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the Public Safety Group, Holly Porter.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. The Transparent Review of Unjust Transfers and Holds Act, known as the Truth Act, as codified in Government Code Section 7283.1, requires the governing body of a county to hold a community forum if a law enforcement agency within that county has provided Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, with access to an individual during the previous year. Every year, we ask all department heads within the county to answer whether their department provided ICE with access to an individual for the purpose of civil immigration enforcement. The Sheriff's Office is the only one with information to report. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Sheriff Kelly Martinez.
Thank you, Holly. Good evening, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. As Holly has mentioned, the Sheriff's Department falls within the reporting requirements of the Truth Act, given our role of transferring individuals from our custodial setting to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. For the purpose of this evening's presentation, we will highlight legislation that governs immigration enforcement and the parameters in which we are able to facilitate such transfers, as well as department policies, processes, and data associated with individuals in our custody who were transferred to ICE. In 2013, 2016, and 2017, a trio of immigration bills from the California legislature were signed that impacted law enforcement agencies' involvement in federal immigration enforcement. The Transparency and Responsibility Using State Tools Act, known as the Trust Act, AB 4, was approved by the governor in 2013 and implemented in 2014. This bill deals with how authorities handle immigration transfers and notification requests from ICE. It limits the crimes for which jails can hold a person that ICE wants to arrest, and it deals with people who are in jail and whether an ICE transfer or notification request is honored based on the crime that person has committed. In 2017, the Transparent Review of Unjust Transfers and Holds, or Truth Act, AB 2792, went into effect requiring local law enforcement agencies, prior to an interview between the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement and an individual in custody regarding civil immigration violations, to provide the individual a written consent form as specified that would explain, among other things, the purpose of the interview, that it is voluntary, and that the individual may decline to be interviewed. It requires the consent form to be available in specified languages and requires a local law enforcement agency to provide copies of specified documentation received from ICE to the individual and to notify the individual regarding the intent of the agency to comply with the ICE request. It is also this state statute that brings us here this evening, since it requires the local governing body to hold a public community forum to provide information to the public about ICE's access to individuals. In 2018, the California Values Act, or SB 54, also known as the Sanctuary State Law, went into effect, which did the following. It prohibits state and local law enforcement from holding individuals on the basis of federal immigration detainers or transferring them into federal custody unless they've been convicted in the last 15 years for one of a list of 31 crimes or are a registered sex offender. If not, they may only be held with a warrant from a federal judge. It prohibits state and local law enforcement from asking anyone about their immigration status. And it states that local and state law enforcement authorities may not use resources, including personnel or facilities, to investigate or arrest people for federal immigration enforcement purposes, among other provisions. Since the enactment of these three pieces of legislation, the Sheriff's Department has remained committed to developing and maintaining collaborative relationships with all stakeholders to build and strengthen public trust, effective policing, and ensure public safety. Sheriff's Department policies and procedures reflect any changes to laws and statutes to ensure personnel act in accordance with state law. Sheriff's policies include Section 6.24, which is the law enforcement database use and criminal records dissemination. It states that employees shall not use any information contained within these databases for immigration enforcement purposes except as authorized by the California Values Act. Section 6.47, immigration laws and enforcement. This section restricts agency, resources, and personnel from collaborating on immigration enforcement. These policies also include detentions policy and procedure, Q.4, verification of legal status and conformance to immigration laws. This policy directs that no individual in custody would be delayed in the release process. All our policies and procedures are available to the public on our website. I'd like to introduce our Detentions Processing Division Assistant Manager, Liliana Martinez Puentes, who will be presenting information on data that has been maintained in relation to the Truth Act.
Good evening. I would like to provide a brief overview on the Sheriff's Detention Services Bureau's protocols as it relates to immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE. Outside law enforcement agencies, including ICE agents, do not have free access to any sheriff's facilities or jails. ICE is required to check in via the primary entrance point and follow professional visitor guidelines. This allows the department to monitor and track ICE's access. If ICE would like to receive information on an individual or conduct an interview, request forms are submitted to the Jail Population Management Unit for review and compliance with state law. The Sheriff's Department will not transfer an individual to immigration authorities unless authorized by a judicial warrant or based upon a qualifying conviction as per state law. In compliance with California Government Code 7283.1, an individual is provided a consent form known as the Form J330 that explains the purpose of the interview, that the interview is voluntary, that they may decline to be interviewed, and that they may choose to be interviewed only with their attorney present. Another form, known as Form J335, is used to notify the incarcerated person that ICE will be notified of their release date, whereas the J340 form is used to notify if a release date is not yet available. We provide these forms to not only the incarcerated person, but a copy is also provided to their attorney or designated individual. Given the diversity of those in our custodial setting, ICE interview consent forms are available in 9 threshold languages. They are English, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Korean, Arabic, Somali, and Farsi. However, individuals are always offered the availability of translator services if desired. As we look at the historical data related to ICE interview requests over the past 7 years, you will see a significant jump in J340 forms took place in 2018, which illustrates the number of notifications issued to incarcerated persons when ICE was inquiring about their release date that was yet to be made available. This stemmed from the enactment of Senate Bill 54, which removed the open access of this information, causing ICE having to go through a formally tracked request process. In 2019, despite a bump of J340 requests, There was a decline in interview requests, presumably because of a department policy change related to ICE's limited access to facilities. ICE agents were required in 2019 to start checking into detention facilities at the primary entrance points, as are all law enforcement officers, in addition to signing in and exchanging their government-issued ID for a facility visitor pass. Department policy was such that ICE was no longer allowed to have open access and was required to follow professional visitor guidelines. In 2020-2021, we experienced a significant decrease in activity based on the COVID-19 pandemic and ICE's practices relating to requests and interviews in the state of California. 2023 again had 0 interview requests, yet saw a significant increase in notification requests. That's when ICE asked for notification on an individual's release date. In January 2024, the Sheriff's Department released its data on 2023 ICE transfers and interviews. This report is formally submitted to the State Department of Justice as well as posted on our public website. No ICE interview requests were made or took place. In 2023, our Jail Population Management Unit received a total of 1,059 ICE notification requests. Of those requests, 874 were rejected because the incarcerated person did not meet the necessary criteria under State Senate Bill 54. 185 individuals were determined to have SB 54 qualifying charges, convictions, or criminal history. Therefore, the request was accepted. Examples of qualifying charges include murder, possessing child pornography, grand theft, and unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor, to name a few. In 2023, 25 transfers took place. Individuals that were transferred to ICE were determined to have qualifying charges, convictions, or criminal history per statute, and ICE determined a need to take them into their custody upon release from sheriff's custody. This chart reflects a history of ICE transfers over the past 7 years. This graphic, which is available on our public website's open data portal, shares the information related to the 25 individuals that were released to ICE and their qualifying conviction charge. All 25 individuals transferred self-identified as being male, with 23 self-identified as being Hispanic and 2 Laotian. The top qualifying offenses for 2023 include 3 charges for the transportation or sale of restricted or dangerous drugs, 3 charges of knowingly receiving stolen property, 2 charges of driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs with 0.08% or greater blood alcohol content causing bodily injury, 2 charges of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor more than 3 years younger than the perpetrator, and 2 charges of residential and commercial burglary entering with the intent to commit theft or any felony. I would like to now turn it back to Sheriff Martinez to conclude this evening's presentation.
Thank you, Lily. As Sheriff, when it comes to balancing Senate Bill 54 and victim rights, it's essential to consider the perspectives of both sides. While protecting the rights of undocumented immigrants is crucial, it is equally important to ensure that victims of crimes are not overlooked or neglected in the process and that communities are not re-victimized. Balancing these interests requires a careful approach that upholds the principles of justice, fairness, and compassion for all the individuals involved. As I've mentioned before, since the enactment of SB 54, the Sheriff's Department has been working to balance the authority vested in state statute with department policies and procedures that have incorporated community and immigration advocates' input. As Sheriff, I believe it is crucial for every member of our region to live with dignity, security, and the opportunity to thrive in our communities. Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. On behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, we'll now proceed with individuals that requested to speak on this item. We have 52 requests to speak, 39 in person, 13 requesting to speak by phone, and 2 requests for group presentations. We also received 70 e-comments, 4 in favor, 65 in opposition, and 1 neutral comment. For any members of the public, additionally, we received 14 individuals have registered their opposition but do not wish to address the board. Any individuals that requested to speak on this item by phone, we'll ask you to please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. Before we begin with the in-person speakers, I just want to note for everyone here that it's really important that we give everybody an opportunity to be heard, whether it's your turn to speak, someone else is speaking, or a county supervisor speaking. The board's rules of procedure are very clear about disruptive behavior, and anyone that is disruptive will be warned, and if they continue to disrupt the meeting, they will be asked to leave the chamber. We're going to begin with our group presentations. Both are in opposition. Each group will have 10 minutes to address the board. All 3 members of the group must speak during that 10 minutes. We're going to ask you to please self-regulate your time with the timer on the podium. As a reminder, each person in the group may not speak for more than 4 minutes. As you come forward, I'll ask you to please state your name at the podium before you begin your presentation. I'd like to invite forward the first group. That includes Monica Langarica, Felicia Gomez, and Margaret Baker. And again, I'll ask you to please come to the podium and just state your name, verifying that everybody's here.
And if you could put the, good.
It's coming up, thank you.
Thank you.
If I could have each of you state your name at the podium, and then we'll begin your timer.
Margaret Baker.
Thank you.
Felicia Gomez.
Great.
Monica Langarica.
Wonderful. All right, I will start your 10 minutes. Again, please self-regulate your time.
Good evening, Chair Vargas and Supervisors. I'm Margaret Baker, presenting on behalf of South Bay People Power, together with my colleagues from ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties and the Center for Immigration Law and Policy at UCLA Law, as well as community partners from American Friends Service Committee and Universidad Popular. We're here to state that it is well past time for our county to cut ties with ICE. Slide 2, please. Tonight, the Sheriff Department's presentation reveals some of its ongoing collusion with ICE, including notifications and transfers of dozens of community members to ICE last year alone. We reject these and other forms of entanglement with ICE and have argued at each Truth Act forum that these ICE notifications and transfers must stop. They're entirely voluntary and unjustly thrust community members into the crosshairs of immigration, detention, and deportation. Next slide, please. We are not alone in our position that ICE transfers are unnecessary and unjust. At least 8 California counties have already taken the lead in opting out of transfers, and we should be next. ICE transfers unfairly expose non-citizen community members to double jeopardy because it is only when non-citizen community members have served their jail time or are otherwise eligible for release that the San Diego Sheriff's Department voluntarily transfers them to the ICE detention and deportation machine. Once in ICE custody, they are detained for indefinite periods of time and face permanent family separation by deportation. Strikingly, these transfers to ICE take place on the same day that U.S. citizens with the exact same convictions are released to their families and communities. This double punishment is unacceptable.
Good evening. My name is Felicia Gomez. I'm the Senior Policy Advocate at the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. Next slide, please. We are especially concerned because ICE transfers are on the rise in our community. While their aggregate data reflects a slight increase over the years, each number represents a life of a community member who was ripped from their community and separated from their family through deportation, directly as a result of the San Diego Sheriff's Department collaboration with ICE. Next slide. We know that in addition to endangering the lives of our neighbors and family members, ICE transfers also cost the county an estimated tens of thousands of dollars, according to calculations based on LA County transfers. Next slide. Based on the San Diego Sheriff's reported transfer numbers, this means that San Diego taxpayers have likely paid over $50,000 to transfer 25 people in 2023. over $158,000 on transfers since 2021, and more than $1 million on transfers since San Diego County began reporting this data in 2018. Despite doing all of this work for the federal government does not reimburse our county for the resources we spend to carry out these transfers, which again are completely voluntary. This means that we as taxpayers foot the bill.
Next slide, please. Good evening, Chair and Supervisors. I'm Monica Langarica, I'm a Senior Staff Attorney at the Center for Immigration Law and Policy at UCLA School of Law, and I'm a current and lifelong resident of San Diego County. We want to point out for the board that according to its transfer data for 2023, the San Diego Sheriff's Department transferred one community member due to a so-called underlying conviction from 2002. And that's the data that's contained at line 2 of the table that the sheriff shared earlier. This means that the San Diego Sheriff's Department subjected this person to the kind of double punishment that my colleague Margaret spoke about for conduct that's over 2 decades old. It also means that that transfer was in possible violation of SB 54 or the California Values Act, which only permits transfers based on this kind of underlying conviction if and only if it occurred within the past 15 years. Next slide, please. We want to flag that we are pursuing additional information about this particular transfer. But the important lesson here for all of us is that engaging in these wholly voluntary transfers under the auspices of SB 54 carve-outs, which permits but does not require transfers, this all requires highly complex legal analysis, and any misstep, any mistake in that analysis could result in de facto unlawful behavior, like unlawful and unauthorized ICE holds. And ultimately what that could result in is steep litigation costs for the county. And again, those are steep litigation costs for which taxpayers would foot the bill. Again, this is entirely preventable and avoidable because these transfers are voluntary. They're not required under SB 54, though they might be permitted. But as my colleague shared, at least 8 California counties have taken the step of opting out of these transfers and therefore opting out of the risk altogether. Our county could opt out tomorrow. Next slide, please. And we hope that it finally will. We're here one more year to urge the San Diego Sheriff's Department to cut ties with ICE and with Customs and Border Protection once and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the second group presentation. I'd like to invite forward Lily Arani, Robert Vivar, and Ian Cervello. Call your name, please come forward again, just like the previous group. State your name at the podium.
Hi, my name is Lily Irani, and I'm...
We're going to ask each of you to state your name.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep. Go ahead.
My name is Lily Irani.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Robert Vivar.
Great.
Good evening, Ian Cervello, San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium.
Perfect, thank you. We'll now begin your 10 minutes.
Okay, great. So SDIRC is a coalition of 50 organizations in the San Diego region that fight for immigrant rights. I'm Lily Irani. I'm representing United Taxi Workers San Diego in the coalition and also labor. We're here today because San Diego Sheriff's actions continue to put the community at risk. Next slide, please. Their continued collusion with DHS and ICE aids in the unjust deportation, detention, and separation of families in our region. We want to highlight 4 ways that the sheriff colludes with DHS and ICE. First, the sheriff transfers individuals to ICE. She also notifies ICE when individuals are being released from jail. This, in effect, punishes immigrants twice for the same crime, as others have spoken about. She also allows DHS and ICE access to county property, including jails and parking lots. The effect of this is important for the supervisors as immigrant communities come to distrust county agencies as a whole, which prevents them from accessing key services. Third, the sheriff participates on joint task forces with federal immigration agencies. This fosters distrust in local law enforcement because people reasonably feel that local law enforcement and federal law enforcement are, as far as they're concerned, practically the same entity. Now I want to deep dive into the fourth way the sheriff colludes with DHS and ICE, sharing data, information, and resources. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start by deep diving into one key example of such data sharing, ARGIS, or the Automated Regional Justice Information System, maintained by SANDAG. So ARGIS aggregates data from law enforcement agencies, and then it shares or sells that data. The sheriff provides data to ARGIS, including personal information and details from witnesses and victims. ARGIS, as KPBS has reported, sells this information, including to Border Patrol and Homeland Security investigations. While the data buyers supposedly sign a guarantee that the data is not used for immigration enforcement, there's no external oversight over ARGIS or over the agencies holding San Diegans' data. Some of these agencies are well known for lying and for cover-ups. So do we want the fox guarding the henhouse? Next slide, please. ARGIS is only one of many technologies with data sharing capabilities accessed by the sheriff. The growth of the tech industry has given law enforcement vast digital tools and networks of third-party databases that enable data sharing with federal immigration enforcement. These tools help law enforcement collect more and more data and make it faster and easier than ever to share it. We know from other jurisdictions, such as Chicago, that ICE has used information they have accessed from shared databases like Vigilance automated license plate readers or Palantir's data visualization platforms. This kind of cross-agency data sharing that's automated and digitized supercharges and accelerates family separations and deportations. It also increases the risks of erroneous enforcement, as many hands are interpreting data they did not collect. It's difficult to understand what information collection, sharing occurs, and the opaque nature of joint task forces just makes the problem even worse. So we need oversight both over public agencies and the private companies the county contracts with or purchases from. All this talk about data sounds abstract, but the stakes are real as data-fueled decisions harm people. So I'd like to invite Robert Vivar to share his story on the impact of ICE transfers. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Good evening. My name is Roberto Vivar. I'm the co-founder of Unified U.S. Deported Veterans Resource Center and also an SDIRC advisory board member. I am also an immigrant that was impacted by ICE notification and transfers. During the course of my detention, because of the notification from local sheriffs to ICE, I was not permitted to participate in a custody substance abuse program, even though it was court recommended. Once my commitment was completed, I was transferred to ICE for deportation proceedings. This did not render me the opportunity to defend myself from a flawed plea agreement that was not honored. As the breadwinner of my household, it was impossible to secure adequate legal representation, which placed extreme economic pressure on my family members. Our home went into foreclosure. My son's military career was now in jeopardy, as he was a co-signer on our home, and his military career was on the line. My daughter and two granddaughters also lost their home, as they had been living with me. My 6 U.S.-born grandchildren did not have the opportunity to grow up with the love that a grandfather can afford them. Detention and deportation of community members does not only affect the individual, but all the family members. Children suffer the injustice of being torn apart from one or both parents, which result in a traumatic experience that affects the child's learning capabilities, which hinder them from performing in school to their capacity to absorb a quality education to prepare them to meet life's challenges. My loved ones endured tremendous struggle during my deportation, not only emotionally, but also economically. The reason I'm here today is for the grace of God and the belief of several caring individuals and organizations that believed a grave injustice had been committed. I was very fortunate that the law firm of Munger, Tolles, and Olson believed I deserved an opportunity to come home to the United States. Thus fighting many legal challenges to reach the California Supreme Court, where my case was ordered vacated and finally had my legal residence restored. I mentioned this as an example of the enormous resources that the county had to extend. If I had not been transferred to ICE, I would have had the opportunity to continue my employment, pay for my legal defense, and avoid the county's expense to continue litigation that eventually was nullified. Next slide, please. Recently, one of our San Diego community members' remains were returned after deportation. A Marine Corps veteran that at the age of 17 enlisted in the Marine Corps because he sensed the need to give back to his adopted and loved country. This Marine veteran also suffered the consequences of an ICE transfer without being able to receive adequate legal representation. Service was attended by close to 100 of his relatives, including his spouse, brother, sister, children, nieces, nephews, and many community members. This is a very common illustration of the large number of family members that are directly impacted by ICE transfers. It's not just the individual who is impacted. Many of our communities consist of mixed status families, many dating back to when this corner of the United States was still Mexico. Many of these families, even when victimized, fear reporting the crime for concern their family members will be delivered to ICE, thus increasing the crime rate in our communities and continuing a sense of distrust in law enforcement instead of welcoming collaboration with law enforcement to keep our communities safe. Let's work together to build a safer community with trust, cooperation between law enforcement and the community they serve by ending ICE notifications, transfers, and data sharing. I would like to next introduce my colleague, Ian Sorello, Chairman of SDIRC. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Ian Cervello. I'm with the Asia Pacific American Labor Alliance and also currently sits as the chair of the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. I am also a private immigration attorney here in San Diego, and Robert's story is not an isolated story. It's something that happened to a lot of other families. I have represented several clients who are in that exact situation, and so just to highlight some of the things that we wanted to hear. The first bullet point: 185 immigrants were subject to ICE notifications and transfers for deportation, as shown by the data from our sheriff's department. And then the second bullet point, I think I would like to correct that ICE transfers numbers increased from 18 in 2021 to 25 last year. That's an error in that bullet point. And the third bullet point here that we want to highlight is that the sheriff's presentation, again, I'm not sure if it was corrected, but the initial slides that were sent to us reference state law stating that they are allowed to transfer all individuals with qualifying conviction within a 15-year period. So next slide, please. So sheriff's notification results to two different criminal justice systems, as highlighted by the previous presentation, and we call to end all of these ICE transfers. Next slide, please. And lastly, we would like to call for the immediate stop of ICE transfers and allow the HS access to country facilities and not allow them.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. That concludes the request for group presentation. We'll now hear from the individual speakers. I'll be calling you in groups of 5, so I'll ask you to please listen for your name. I'd like to invite forward Mark, allegedly Audra, Luke, Alberto Melchor, and Mohammed Rahimi. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record. And again, we'll ask you to please stay on topic for this item. Thank you.
Mark, first of all, I have nothing against people immigrating, and if I was from another country, I would want to immigrate here. The simple fact is that half the world will and would immigrate here if they could. And we simply cannot even come close to supporting a fraction of that. That's simply impossible. It's not my opinion. That being said, ICE should not be prohibited from accessing information and/or immediately deporting illegal immigrants who have committed serious crimes either here in the U.S. or in the country they are from. The fact I even have to say this shows how much our government has no concern at all for its citizens. And by the way, I have to give more information for the census than I am a citizen. You wouldn't believe what they ask you for the census. Now, here's the reason I'm concerned. The result of what's been happening here in California, and I don't search for these headlines. They just pop up, and I just copy them when I see an interesting one every once in a while. So here's some headlines. Just in, HHS whistleblower testifies before lawmakers on exploitation of unaccompanied children. California officials defy ICE detainer, release convicted child murder. Migrant man deported 7 times, charged with murder in Ohio. Chinese migrant suddenly found on California military base. Man who shot at California cop previously deported, arrested, but cops wouldn't honor the ICE detainer, feds say. Criminal alien arrested for double homicide after local law enforcement fails to honor ICE immigration detainers. Illegal immigrant murders 4 in jurisdiction of sheriff sued for reporting alien criminals to ICE. Illegal immigrant charged in string of California murders may face death penalty, officials say. And I'm running out of time. This is unacceptable. This is fucking unacceptable.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Again, if I've called your name, I'll ask you to please line up on the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak, just so we can keep the flow going. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alberto Melchor. I'm the operations manager for Safe Harbors Network. We provide temporary housing to migrants who end up in San Diego. I would like to encourage the Board of Supervisors to end the ICE transfers of local detainees, and we're advocating that position. Again, as previously stated, one of the main reasons is to prevent family separations and also to improve policing in the area, or to prevent further distrust of law enforcement. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call 5 additional speakers. AJ Hoven, Kim Ports, Clint Carney, Jen Newell-Davis, and Patricia Mondragon. I've called your name. Please come forward and line up on the east wall under the murals.
You ready? My name's Luke. I'm going to read to you 8 USC Code 1324, bringing in and harboring certain aliens. Criminal penalties. Any person who, knowing that a person is an alien, brings to or attempts to bring to the United States in any manner whatsoever such person at a place other than a designated port of entry or place other than as designated by the commissioner, regardless of whether such alien has received prior official or authorization to come to, enter, or reside in the United States, and regardless of any future official action which may be taken with respect to such alien. Knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, transports or moves or attempts to transport or move such alien within the United States by means of transportation or otherwise in furtherance of such violation of law. 3, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, conceals, harbors, or shields from detection, or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection such alien in any place, including any building or any means of transportation. 4, encourages or induces an alien to come to, enter, or reside in the United States, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that such coming to, entry, or residence is or will be in violation of law. Or 5, engages in any conspiracy to commit any of the preceding acts, or 2, aids or abets the commission of any of the preceding acts. You're all guilty of this all day, every day. We watch it all day, every day. We go to the hotels, we go to the airport, we've seen it all every day. Where you go, everything you do is in violation of this law, and you're supposed to enforce it. You took an oath, so did all of you. B, a person who violates subparagraph A shall for each alien in respect to whom such a violation occurs.
Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
You're hammering them.
Your time is up. Next speaker, please. Consuelo, I did not call your name yet. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. My name is AJ Hoven, a representative from the California Immigrant Policy Center, and an immigrant that has lived in California for nearly 35 years. I'm here tonight to ask all of you to please end the practice of notifications and transfers to ICE. This work leads to the breaking up of families, the breakdown of communities, and is rooted in xenophobia and racism. If someone were to move to San Diego from St. Louis, Missouri, commit a crime, serve their time, we would not find it logical to expel them back to Missouri. We'd recognize that the support structures for successful reintegration exist here, locally. We know that upholding the dignity of the person would center an opportunity to reunite people with their families. And we recognize that our shared fundamental understanding of fairness and justice would note incarceration is the measure by which we assess the harm caused. In short, they have paid their duty to society. Forcing these folks into further detention and potential deportation cuts across our concept of fairness and does a disservice to any sense of rehabilitation. It is an arbitrary and harmful process that's meted out toward people simply because of where they are born. It is cruel and racist, a clear violation of the county's own stated desire to uphold the dignity and humanity of immigrants. Please end transfers now, not one more.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Kim Ports. I'm a pastor at Nesta United Methodist Church in South San Diego. I serve on the San Diego Immigrant Right Consortium's advisory board, and I'm on the board of Safe Harbors. And I'm here tonight to ask you to please stop the practice of notifying of the Sheriff's Department working with ICE. We want safe communities. We want people to know that they can approach the county for services or law enforcement and know that their other community members are not in danger from ICE or deportation. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers.
Hello, Supervisors. My name is...
Just one moment, please. Thank you. Itzel Magande Chavez, Andrew Banez, Giovanna Valenzuela, Ted Womack, and J. Nika Faulkner. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Hello, Supervisors. My name is Clint Carney. I'm with Survivors of Torture International here in San Diego, and I'm also an advisory board member with the San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium. I've mentioned before in this room that 44% of refugees and asylum seekers are survivors of torture from all over the world who reach our county. The torture and trauma that is experienced by our clients often happens in jails and prisons. When survivors and other immigrants arrive here in San Diego County, they are often detained. They're re-traumatized in detention centers surrounded by armed guards. If they make a mistake, they are re-traumatized in jail. When they are eligible for release, the endless trauma only continues if they are transferred by the sheriff to ICE. One thing we try to do at Survivors is we try to help them, our clients, rebuild trust with local law enforcement and to begin to develop a relationship with local police officers. But when colluding with ICE occurs, it eliminates any chance of our clients ever trusting any law enforcement officer. We ask you to please respect the rights of all San Diegans and please stop ICE transfers.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Patricia Mondragon, Regional Policy Manager for Alliance San Diego. I've lived in San Diego for over 50 years. Even though my parents had legal permanent status, my childhood was still darkened by the fear that my parents could be deported, fear that our family would be separated, fear about not being able to see my mom or dad again if La Migra took them away. Children of immigrant and refugee parents live with this fear every day in San Diego County. It is precisely fears of deportation and family separation that breeds mistrust all the way down to the youngest in the immigrant community. Public safety is dependent on community trust. The sheriff's current entanglement with DHS agencies makes us all less safe when their actions erode that trust. These practices include ICE transfers, notifications, participating on joint task forces, allowing ICE to access county property, and sharing our personal data with DHS. It is within the sheriff's power to end these practices immediately. According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we are all equal in dignity with the right to life, liberty, and security, regardless of distinction, including national origin. When the sheriff treats people differently based on where they are born, it creates two separate and unequal criminal justice systems that are a violation of human rights. We are either a county that values inclusion, equity, and welcoming immigrants, or we are not. Right now, between the Supervisors' commendable immigration programs and the sheriff's collaboration with ICE, we are a county of contradictions. It is time to join 8 other California counties and cut ties with ICE. I urge the Board of Supervisors to call upon the sheriff to immediately stop using county resources to aid in the separation of families and the deportation of community members. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Chair Vargas and Supervisors. My name is Itzel Maganda Chavez. I am the Civic Engagement Director with Alliance San Diego and a resident of District 1. I'm also an immigrant that has called San Diego home for more than 25 years. And I'm strongly opposed to the San Diego Sheriff's collaboration with immigration authorities. DHS, ICE, and Border Patrol all have a long history of abusing and harassing our communities, deporting our friends and neighbors, separating families, and instilling fear in my community. I believe that we can do better. We are a special region here in San Diego County. We're a binational region, and as such, we should lead with our values of inclusivity, and we should stop punishing people twice. County supervisors do what is morally correct and uphold the human dignity of all community members. The sheriff is putting us out of compliance with international laws. Supervisors, please uphold the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and ensure that Article 7 is protected, and it states that all are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination. So we call on you to do what is right and protect San Diego community members from unjust and unnecessary harm. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'll call 5 additional speakers. Finley Dreyer, Jalen Choi, Sarah Kennedy, Natalia Rodriguez, and Julie Diaz-Martinez. If I've called your name, please come forward and line up on the east wall. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Banez. We want you to stop ICE transfers and notifications. The system isn't right. People deserve to live with dignity and humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Excuse me. Hey, everybody. My name is Ted. I'm just here to remind everyone that just because something is legal or legally permissible doesn't make it okay. We got to remember that we live in America. Slavery was legal at some point in time. Trayvon Martin died, and they deemed that legal. People like Breonna Taylor are killed inside of their homes, and they deem stuff like that legal. Even Anastasio Hernandez Rojas died, and some of that stuff was considered legal until we found out that folks were hiding information purposely. So just because we have a legal route to do something doesn't mean that we should necessarily be doing that, especially when we see examples happening throughout this state that might make it a little bit easier for us to conduct in those areas, right? And just being with all the things that you do have to do, or the things that people are talking about today, it seems like it would be easier for you all to take the recommendation of other cities and just disengage that. Working, whether it be in task force or just so it happens that you all share the same kind of database, can create those situations where it's clashing, and then you have situations like this, and you hear from people like us about things that we don't like and everybody else doesn't like. But at the end of the day, just because it's legal and there's a legal path to do it does not make that the okay or right thing to do. So I'm just here to urge you all to end those relationships, like the examples of other counties that have taken, and just stop colluding, stop sharing information, and stop participating in task force with other type of entities outside of yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Jalen Choi, and I'm with Alliance San Diego and SDRC. Local law enforcement agencies should not be working with ICE to deport migrants. The issue at hand is not just about how the actions of the Sheriff's Department with DHS and ICE creates fear and mistrust of local law enforcement, but it's about who is welcome in this country and who is not. Our nation's history has shown repeatedly that migrants have never been welcomed to our country, even though this country has been built on the backs of migrants. It is fundamentally unjust to subject migrants to harsh and punitive immigration enforcement measures, especially when many are fleeing from violence, persecution, or extreme poverty in their home countries. It goes against principles of compassion, human rights, and dignity to forcibly remove people from the place they have come to call home, often separating them from their families and communities in the process. So County Supervisors, we call on to you to lead in our region and do the right thing by stopping the collaboration between the Sheriff and immigration authorities. Thank you.
Just want to remind members of the public that under the board's rules of procedures, audience members shall not whistle, clap, or stamp feet or anything that is disruptive. So we'll ask you to please stop snapping your fingers. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Kennedy. I'm a resident of District 3. I'm here to also speak up against the ongoing collusion between the San Diego Sheriff's Department and DHS and ICE, which amplifies the harm to our immigrant communities in particular. DHS, ICE, and Border Patrol all have a history of harassment and abuse in our community, and now our local law enforcement also does not have a great track record when it comes to abuse and violence against community members. But the inappropriate collusion and data sharing between local and federal agencies creates an unjust double jeopardy for some of our neighbors, and that makes all of us less safe. Now, hearing Robert's story today really resonated with me. As an educator, I've seen the impact of similar stories on my students, especially in a community with so many mixed status families. This ongoing collusion does not keep us safer, and it creates and amplifies fear and distrust. And we've seen other counties like Los Angeles change this, and so I feel this isn't an unreasonable ask. There are paths forward to move away from this. Stop the transfers, stop the notifications, stop the joint task force. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'll call 5 additional speakers. Helena Reyes, Lilian Serrano, Jean Hui Tran, Aaron Suramoto Grassi, and Flower Alvarez Lopez. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Natalia Rodriguez, and I am a San Diego County resident and a community organizer with Justice Overcoming Boundaries in San Diego County. I am here today in solidarity with Alliance San Diego and the SDIRC. We demand that the sheriff stop ICE transfers and notifications, stop allowing DHS and ICE to access county property, including parking lots, stop participating on joint task forces with DHS and ICE agencies, and stop sharing information, data, and resources with the DHS and ICE. As a child of immigrants, I am here today to demand that the sheriff and the county stop using county resources to aid in the detention, deportation, and separation of families in our region with our tax dollars. Collusion between the sheriff department, DHS, and ICE creates fear and mistrust of local law enforcement and local governments, meaning community members are less likely to call county when they need access to vital services. As a housing justice organizer, I work with mixed income families who live in fear of their landlords who regularly implement fear tactics to keep these families quiet after unfairly raising their rents above the legal limit and threatening to call ICE if the families attempt to seek any sort of justice. And these are mixed documented households. ICE transfers and notifications result in immigrants being punished twice for the same crime. This practice also creates a dual criminal justice system, one for U.S. citizens and another for immigrants. This is unfair and runs counter to the county's values on race and equity. Several counties across the state, including LA, have recognized the injustice of ICE transfers and notifications and have stopped this harmful practice. Stop ICE transfers and notifications, stop allowing DHS and ICE to access county property, including parking lots, participating on joint task forces with DHS and ICE agencies, and stop sharing information and data resources with DHS and ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Julie Diaz-Martinez. I'm from Fallbrook.
San Diego Sheriff Department continues to dangerously transfer individuals to ICE and to notify ICE when individuals are being released from jail. This leads to deportation and separation of families. ICE transfers and notification results in immigrants being punished twice for the same crime, and in some cases, even when these individuals are legal permanent residents. San Diego Sheriff Department, as you continue to collude with DHS and ICE, you continue to create fear and mistrust of local law enforcement and local government, meaning the community members that you are pledged to serve and protect were far more less likely to contact you. I'm requesting that the Board of Supervisors immediately end all collusion between ICE and San Diego. You are not alone. You would not be doing anything brave. As stated, over 8 different counties and agencies have done that. I'm asking that you simply join other cities, other counties, and law enforcement, including sheriff departments, who have chosen to end all ICE notifications and ICE transfer. The Los Angeles Sheriff Department promised to the voters of LA County and delivered on the promise that they would no longer facilitate the separation of immigrant families caused by ICE cruel deportation practices. The board, if you so proceed to end all ICE deportations and transfers right now, you will be in great company, including Max Huntsman, the Inspector General in Los Angeles, and General Bonta. I expect once and for all that San Diego's never end up in the clutches of a rogue agency that has no regard for civil and human rights. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. I'm Paulina Reyes, resident of D4 and an attorney with Immigrant Defenders Law Center, where we provide pro bono representation to adults and families in removal proceedings. I oppose the San Diego Sheriff's Department continued practice of assisting DHS and ICE to deport our community members. Notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail and granting them direct access to individuals in custody directly leads to the detention and deportation of our family, neighbors, and friends. In my role at IMDEF, I have seen that San Diego can do a better job to meet the needs of our immigrant community. We are neglecting to take into account the serious implications that referring an individual to ICE custody can have on our own community, and we heard that multiple times today. As an organization, we have represented dozens of families who were separated as a result of transfers to ICE custody. The end result is always the same: chaos for the family while they attempt to manage childcare for U.S. citizen children and family, and lack of financial resources because the sheriffs have cooperated by sending San Diego resident to ICE detention. It is not fair nor just to punish someone again for the same act. People deserve to be treated with dignity. We call upon the sheriff to stop deporting our neighbors and separating families, stop transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail, stop sharing information and data and resources with ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Board of Supervisors, Sheriff Martinez. My name is Lilian Serrano, and today I'm speaking to you as the Border Policy Director at Alliance San Diego, but most importantly, as a resident of District 5. This is the 7th year that I joined my fellow directly impacted community members, advocates, communities, organizations, and other San Diegans to demand our sheriff to start with dignity and put public safety first. To ask members of this board to stop using immigrants for their political gains and put public safety first. To ask this board to lead with compassion and put public safety first. Public safety depends on public trust, and trust is something that you gain with real work. The Sheriff Department's entanglement with the Department of Homeland Security directly undermines its duties and lawful obligations to be accountable to protect and serve all San Diegans. The Sheriff's and therefore the county's volunteer participation in family separations and deportations of community members continue to enforce the well-known sentiment that immigrants cannot trust county officials, that immigrant communities cannot trust San Diego County. We're not asking you for much. We want to make sure we foster public safety and public trust in our local institutions. We want for all San Diegans to be treated the same way, regardless of where they were born. We want policies and practice that protect our human dignity. We want to end ICE transfers. We want to end ICE notifications and all collaborations with the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Zhang Wei. I'm a community organizer. I want to share a personal story with you about my family. So my younger brother and I migrated to the U.S., but we were separated. He came here when he was 18 months old, migrated by boat with my mom, with my aunt. My mom and my dad and I came in 1990. I was already teenagers, and my brother only 10 months younger than me. He got in trouble. He hung out with his friends, and in the middle of the night, and one of them shot somebody, killed them, and all of them were scattering and tried to escape. My brother was arrested, never held a gun to shoot another person, but during the 90s, tough on crime, so he ended up got sent to prison for life without parole. The last stop for him was the RTAD down here in County San Diego. My mom used to come down here to visit him all the time. That weekend, on a Saturday, she saw him, and then it's next Sunday, we received a call from the prison saying that he was found hung in prison. That was the year 2018. I was in the middle of organizing people get out the vote. He was still shaking his hand, trying to Hillcrest. And within a week, I had to make the hardest decision in my life with to pull the plug. You have to hear the house from a mom to a child try to wake him up. I can't reflect on this a lot because he never naturalized. Had he still alive today, he would have been deported. And he came here with 18 months old, being deported back to the country. He didn't even speak the language. So I'm going to ask you today to do the right thing, because in the my lifetime work, I will not want to see another person ever be deported. So I'm going to ask you to not allow the Sheriff Department colluding with ICE or sharing any data. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers: Consuelo, Bryant Rumbaugh, Riley Fry, Carla Halverson, and Mia Garcia. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Good evening, Supervisors. My name is Erin Suramoto-Grassi. I'm the Associate Director at Alliance San Diego. I also reside in District 2. Alliance San Diego is strongly opposed to ICE transfers and notifications. While the state allows the sheriff to transfer and notify ICE for certain criminal convictions, it is not mandatory. The only time that the sheriff must transfer or notify ICE is when there is a judicial warrant. And over the last year, there were no judicial warrants, meaning the sheriff chose to transfer every single person. So this is something that our sheriff chooses to do, even though they release U.S. citizens who have committed the exact same crimes every single day. This creates a dual justice system where immigrants are punished twice for the same crime, and where significant harm happens to them and their families. As you listen to some of the stories today, I want you to think about what is morally correct, whether the harm that our communities are suffering is morally correct. And I want folks to reflect on the fact that some of the darkest chapters in our country's history were written under the justification that they were permissible under the law. This includes slavery, Jim Crow, Chinese exclusion, immigration quota systems, the internment of Japanese Americans, and segregation. These were all legal, even though they violated human rights and were morally wrong. San Diego needs to lean into its values of equity and inclusion and stop facilitating the deportations of our community members. We urge the Sheriff and the Board of Supervisors to stop all ICE transfers and notifications immediately.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, Board of Supervisors and Chairwoman Vargas. My name is Flower Alvarez Lopez, and I am a San Diego D5 native. I am the co-director of Universidad Popular. Our organization is based in D5. Our motto is by the community, for the community, and centering the community. We work with the hardest to reach and most vulnerable community members in North County, San Diego. I'm also here with the local LEA San Diego group. As the co-director of a popular education organization, I figure I do some educating. Let me start by reminding us that Europeans are immigrants to this continent, the original immigrants. Let me also remind us that you're standing on land that was stolen from Mexico. Year after year, we come here to this governing body pleading that our county end the collaboration with ICE and the Sheriff's Department, pleading on our historic land. We re-traumatize families when we ask them to come and to share their hardships of having family members transferred and deported, so you all can try to see the human beings and the impacted families. You try to see them as humans and not just numbers. We continue to bring you the stories, we bring you the numbers, and we bring you the violations. We have given you what you need to end this practice. It is time we stand up as a county and end transfers. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Consuelo. The funnest part about being a non-paid activist watchdog of this county is getting to see the patterns and the people who in fact orchestrate things and how they love to have the public be divided amongst each other. They thrive off of this. There's no accident or coincidence that they set up this meeting at 6 o'clock to accommodate these people, because guess what? Before all of you the rest of you come up and speak, I already know how they're going to vote. They're going to vote in favor for what the people are asking for, which is great. Okay, but the thing is that why? We learn from history that we have not learned from history. The majority of these people here come in and they're not paying attention to what this board, nor their city council or anybody else is doing. The government here is not, they don't have your back. It's always for the agenda, it's always for them. This is what they like. They like for us to be at each other's throat, when in fact it's the state against the people. When will you get it? You guys it's Stockholm fucking syndrome. Do you get what Stockholm syndrome is? Look it up right now, Stockholm syndrome. That is what in fact happens all the time at these freaking meetings. And I get when you look at the people and you act like you're so concerned and you're like really caring that this kid's brothers died in prison. You don't care. You could care less. Give up the freaking act. You know what? Please, to the people in the audience, please keep coming in. See how these phonies are and why, in fact, they do what they do. It's not for you. It's for them. It's for the agenda. It's for the freaking people who are pulling the strings.
Mark, that's your second warning for disrupting the meeting. And Audra, that's your first warning. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Riley Fry, and I'm a staff attorney representing Jewish Family Service of San Diego. For those unfamiliar with our work, JFS operates a migrant shelter, which last month welcomed guest number 200,000. I personally work in the removal defense program, meaning I represent non-citizens in immigration court in San Diego and Otay Mesa Detention Center. I'd like to reiterate 2 points already mentioned today: the importance of law enforcement making everyone in the community feel safe, and family separations. First, JFS regularly works with clients who could apply for U visas. A non-citizen is eligible for a U visa if they have experienced a serious crime and they are willing to work with law enforcement to prosecute this crime. When Congress created the U visa, the goal was to strengthen the ability of law enforcement agencies to investigate and prosecute cases of serious crimes, while providing a path to citizenship for the very unfortunate victims of these crimes. In order for something like a U visa to work, non-citizens have to feel comfortable that if they report the crime, they will not be punished for doing so. They have to feel sure that if they go to law enforcement, they will not be sent to ICE for immigration violations. Unfortunately, JFS has met many non-citizens who do not feel safe working with law enforcement, so they don't report the crimes, and they can't get a U visa, and law enforcement are unable to do their job as well. Second, the San Diego Sheriff's coordination with ICE is creating family separation. As an immigration attorney, I am sadly very familiar with the effects of family separation on my clients. I'll give you one example. I represented a man who was in immigration court, and ICE apprehended him at his home one Saturday morning. His 10-year-old child witnessed this separation. The child is now in therapy. He has trouble sleeping. He has gained an unhealthy amount of weight, and his grades have dropped. We have moral and ethical obligations to prevent these family separations.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Pastor Carla Halverson. I represent the Pacifica Synod of the ELCA Amparo Network. From a faith perspective, we ask that you will do the right thing in the micro parts of your management of this county. It seems like a lot of laws have been presented, and we need to look at them and see what are the effects of brushing past the details. So we're going to ask that we will lean into the details, that we will do what is right for the people who are here, and we will remember that we are a country of immigrants primarily. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite 5 additional speakers. Maria Santa Cruz, Mary Niez, Connie Mack, Daniel Jefferson, and Kristen Carriga. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Mia. Kelly Martinez and her deputies are arbiters of state violence. Incarceration is violence. Inmates are often subject to physical violence, sexual violence, and psychological violence. The lack of adequate medical and mental health care and neglect, resulting in astronomical jail deaths on Kelly Martinez's watch, is violence. Police officers do not protect and serve. They terrorize communities through relentless surveillance, violence, and discrimination. ICE and Border Patrol also enact state violence by ripping families and communities apart and subjecting them to the violence of detention and deportation. As someone whose relative was deported after engagement with the judicial system, I can tell you that ICE transfers compound the violence of policing and incarceration. These are evil institutions that you are permitting to join forces in a profoundly evil way. Shame on all of you. Kelly Martinez, you will never wash your hands clean from the blood that is on them. And shame on those. Joel Anderson, you have not looked up once, maybe like 3 times actually, this whole meeting, looking bored, like a bunch of iPad kids that can't be off of their phones for 5 seconds. You two passing notes and giggling like middle schoolers. People are talking about their lives, about trauma that is real. Do your job. Pay attention. Look at us.
All right, still Brian Rumbaugh, so I'm going to educate a little bit, just like the woman a few speakers before. You know, territories, empires have come and fallen all throughout the history of our world. Certainly, we can say that a lot of the battles have been over resources, primarily those being land. You know, here in America, we obviously, this was an opportunity for humanity to live under a nation of laws, to really, and we were setting the example. When it comes to, I'm fully aware of what's going on here. All these, my fellow citizens here are here because this tugs at their heart, as it should. Nobody wants to have families torn apart. As far as I've heard the word collusion, I've heard all this type stuff. I mean, all day today I'm hearing about these, the big federal government funds, you guys colluding to get that to finance things. I mean, is that collusion, or is it only collusion if we really enforce the laws? You know, what's going on right now on the border, we all have to really scratch our head. We are failing at setting an example for the rest of the world. We have been for a long time. Our numbers with regarding this deportations, they seem to be dropping, which is, you know, I mean, my opinion on that is no, it's my opinion alone. But what I can say is that humanity has not found the way yet. We need to set an example. We need to provide people an understanding of what made America important. What's going on right now? This federal government, where is he? Where is he? We got people coming in here committing crimes, raping five-year-old girls, killing people. My fellow friends here, their family members, I'm not putting them in that bucket. But we need to figure it out. We got to take the money out of politics, people. It can be done.
Next speaker, please.
Mary Nees, District 4 resident on land ceded from the Kumeyaay. Good evening, Chair Vargas and members of the board. It's sad that we are here once again to implore the county to do the right thing and adhere to the spirit of SB 54 and end ICE notifications and transfers along with 8 other counties in our state. My 2 points. Number 1, our community is put in jeopardy because sheriff's policy allows transfers of inmates to ICE and unusually broad access to county property, creating a chilling effect. Community members do not want to split citizen and non-citizen families, so they can choose to not report crimes. Number 2, many who voted for Sheriff Martinez didn't realize they voted her into a rare 6-year term, so she's not accountable to voters for quite a while. But you are. You have legislative and budget power, and you can limit the sheriff, in this case, in others, and ensure that the values of safety and equity are adhered to in the County of San Diego. Please stop allowing county funds to be used on joint task forces with ICE, to host ICE in our jails, and to turn over an increasing number of inmates directly to ICE after their sentence has been served. Thank you for your consideration. Evening.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Maria Sana Cruz. I'm a pastor. Represent the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I'm assistant to the bishop for the Latino ministries. I am here to just say that I am very proud to be Mexican. I was taught to respect and to show a good manners. And for that, I show my respect to all of you and all the audience. I just want to share that I was affected by the deportation of my brother many, many years ago. And the reason why he signed up the deportation, because he was afraid and he didn't have the opportunity to see a judge. So he left a child behind. But the most painful thing is that my mom passed 4 months ago, and my mom passed without seeing him. And my brother didn't see her either. It is really sad to see and to witness painful things like this. I'm assuming that you have families too, and you love your family. So families need to be united, and families need to be respect. And I don't believe that the separation, and I don't believe that I don't believe the people who say that they own this country. Nobody owns this country or in other countries. So we are free, and we have the freedom to speak, but with respect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Daniel Jefferson. I'm here as a policy analyst and organizer for the Filipino Workers Center. We organize the Filipino community across Southern California with a strong focus on domestic workers. This collusion with ICE creates a strong atmosphere of fear for our members, both documented and undocumented. They're afraid to go out, they're afraid to engage with the community, but also we do a lot of work to help file wage theft cases, and they're often afraid to do that too. It really undermines their trust in the institutions, and San Diego County has made a lot of progress in recent years on fighting wage theft, and we're very willing to work with the county, and we also work with the state and the federal government on this issue. And just engaging this practice really undermines that trust and makes that very difficult. So just wanted to raise that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'll call the remaining speakers in person: Ilka Weston, Eitan Peled, and Eric Vargas. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Okay. Excuse me. Yeah. My name is Connie Mack. I'm a member of ACLU People Power, a Unitarian Universalist Church. But what I'm really here to be talking about is that I am a bilingual educator. I taught kindergarten and first grade in Chula Vista Elementary School District for 30 years. I saw kids, and it's all of this for me kind of boils down to what did it look like to them, and how did it affect our school and my classroom. Somewhere halfway through my career in the late 90s, I had grandmas coming to conferences in place of mom who had just been deported. The child didn't know where mom went, and she was traumatized. I was faced with being concerned about whether this 5-year-old is learning her letter sounds when she just witnessed ICE taking her mom away. Some of the people here have brought out the fact that the way this affects our communities, if you've got whole families like this child and all the aunts and the uncles and the brothers and the sisters who are witnessing these things and incarceration, detention, and deportation, you can't have a healthy community. And this mom who was afraid, we didn't know what to do with her 5-year-old granddaughter. Also, I had moms coming in who were abused, and they were afraid to report to the police because they were afraid they would be deported if they reported their abuse. So just a lot of what we're in the 7th year. I've been to all 7 years of this pretty much from the beginning. And if we look at it, stop transferring individuals to ICE.
Thank you.
Okay, anyway.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
In 2008, this should be done.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Kristen Carriga. I'm an assistant minister at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego, and I'm also a resident of District 4. I'm here tonight because I'm called by my faith and my values to say to end these transfers and end these notifications. The faith tradition I come from believes in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and also that we are connected. When one person in our community is injured, everyone is injured. And so we ask you to stop this practice that is injuring our community, that is separating families, that is causing fear and distrust. So we ask, please stop these practices.
Next speaker, please.
Hi there, good evening. My name's Eitan Peled. I'm a recent USD law graduate and a resident of District 3. And I'm here to ask for you all to stop the transfers. And to that end, I have 4 quick points for Sheriff Martinez, as has been iterated throughout the evening. First, firewalls between your agency and the DHS deportation agencies builds trust in the community. And those lack of firewalls that you are voluntarily engaging in erodes that trust. And because of that, as you heard, people who are victims and survivors of crimes are hesitant to come forward to your agency. Second, the firewalls work. I mean, as has been mentioned, there have been 8 other counties that do it. It works: LA, San Francisco, and a number of others. Third, by engaging in these transfers, your office is punishing people doubly because of where they are from. And that is fundamentally unjust. And finally, I was shocked to learn from one of the presentations tonight that your carelessness when engaging in these awful transfers is exposing us to potential litigation and potentially costing us millions of dollars to the taxpayers. So to that end, please stop engaging in the transfers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Eric Vargas. I'm a son of an immigrant, and I am a community organizer with ACE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. Our organization serves residents throughout the county, many of which are brown and black people with some connection related to immigration. The sheriff's policy of transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE of release dates results in double punishment and creates a separate justice system for immigrants. This contradicts San Diego County's commitment to racial justice and equity. Law enforcement agencies have an obligation to make sure all people in our communities feel safe, regardless of their immigration status. Public safety is dependent on community trust. The relationship that the sheriff has with DHS agencies, such as ICE, erodes community trust and makes all of us less safe. I urge the Board of Supervisors to call upon the sheriff to immediately end transferring individuals to ICE, stop sharing information, data, and resources with ICE, stop allowing DHS agencies access to county property, and stop participating on joint task force with DHS agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, hello. My name is Ilka Weston. I am a proud institutionalized member of Justice Overcoming Boundaries. I'm also a member of ACE, in addition to being a volunteer with Alliance San Diego and also part of North County Equity and Justice Coalition. Obviously, I am here because guess what? The Truth Act is already in. And frankly, the problem here in San Diego County, while we're seeing throughout the states, counties getting together and fighting this exact same problem, is because our problem is our sheriff who finally shows up. Gore at least had the decency to resign. You faked being a Democrat to be elected, and you do not disclose the information. Shame on you, Kelly Martinez. I can't even call you sheriff. You need to have care and concern. When people do their time in jail, release them. If you're going to further the information, honestly, ICE should be abolished in San Diego County. If there's a severe situation, then they deserve to have an appointed attorney. We didn't want you for 6 years. We didn't want you at all. You lied about your representation. And you sit there with a smile, smug. This is our problem. Gore was our problem. A Democrat doesn't forget who they voted for when Trump and Hillary ran. You should be proud of who you are and not lie. We need to abolish ICE in San Diego, and we need to call out our current sheriff, Sheriff Kelly Martinez, a real problem in our entire county. Thank you. Thank you, Nora Vargas, and thank you, Monica Montgomery and Tara Lawson-Reamer. You are wonderful supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My person uses the name Otter, so it's interesting that I was assaulted at this meeting in November. And it's interesting that all these people think that 5-year-olds should be raped, right? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if these children are raped.
Audrey, the chair is asking you to address the board, please.
I can address whoever I want, Nora. Yeah, I can, actually. Yeah, I can actually address whoever I would like. And that's why I'm asking. All of you, there's been a 5-year-old that's been raped. What, Nora? You don't like that I'm asking the people about the 5-year-old that's been raped? And it doesn't matter, right? Like, my information can be shared, right, Kelly? All of my stuff, that I've been arrested, but none of the people who cross the border illegally, committing a federal offense, should have the same thing happen. But the people in the community it should happen to, but not them, right? They can rape 5-year-old little girls, and it's like, why should they have to actually face it? We already pay $5 million for the defense of these people. So you guys are complicit in this 5-year-old being raped because you want these people to be here and have nobody talk about this information and not share it. Yeah, you like 5-year-olds being raped, right? It's good, isn't it? 5-year-olds being raped is so great.
Audra, you need to address the board.
I do not. I can address whoever I want, Nora. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. You're not the arbiter of free speech. No, you're not. You are? You are. And so you condone 5-year-olds being raped. All of you do. Yes, you do. You're complicit in it. So are all of you guys. Stop notifications of 5-year-olds being raped. Let's have it happen. Does that mean it needs to happen to all of you?
to your children?
Audra.
It doesn't matter when a 5-year-old is
Audra.
raped by somebody who crossed the border
Audra,
illegally.
you're disrupting the meeting.
I am not. I am speaking during my time. Are you going to arrest me again? Where's Gonzalez? Let's have him bring me out.
Audra, your time is
wanna
up. Thank you. Your time is up.
Do it.
I'm gonna recall the speakers that I called earlier: Mohammed Rahimi, Jen Newell Davis, Giovanna Valenzuela, J. Nika Faulkner, Finley Dreyer.
Let's have 5-year-olds be raped.
Audra, this is your second warning.
Are being raped.
Audra, we're gonna ask you to sit down, please.
And it's content.
You're continuing to disrupt the meeting. This is your third warning. We're gonna ask you to please leave the chamber.
I'm doing this.
This is your third warning.
Who has been raped.
Audra,
Legal alien. And nobody gives a shit. So what's
Audra,
has to stand in the
your conduct is continuing to disrupt the meeting. We're going to ask you to please leave the chamber. The chairwoman is asking the deputies to please remove you. Okay, the board is in recess. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and recall the individuals that I called previously. If you're here in the chamber, please come forward. Mohammed Rahimi, Jen Newell Davis, Giovanna Valenzuela, J. Nika Faulkner, and Finley Dreyer. Not seeing any movement in the chamber from those speakers. We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll start with our first caller.
All of those under the U.S. Constitution, Congress is supposed to protect our border. It isn't. I do not advocate further free rein for it in foreign affairs. Specifically, here, I think it within our rights to declare a limited emergency and declare that ICE agents are unwelcome beyond a line in the sand, preferably at the border. We can transport people there as necessary, but we have given them enough time and resources. They, the DHA Secretary and Congress, have lost their confidence that they can handle this problem. If we want to blindly accept whatever legal crap and legal excuse they throw at us, the problems will only get worse. So let's try to give ICE no reason to go beyond the border. My question to you, Sheriff, is have you requested the additional Border Patrol screening and enforcement at the border to keep the ICE people there? And the truth will come out, especially about all the people who get roughed up for nonviolent crimes like Audra, but nothing outrageous like murder or rape. And so the sheriff or the ICE or whoever is in control gets to hide files and obfuscate evidence and get away with it. Thanks for listening. And Sheriff, I would like an answer to my question.
Now hear from the next caller.
Sayed Lamar Sadat, opposite N19.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Sayed Sadat, and I'm with PANA Partnership for Advancement of New Americans. The San Diego Sheriff Department's SDSD is actively colluding with DHS and ICE. This entanglement includes notifying DHS, ICE when individuals are released from jail and are granting these agencies direct access to individuals while in custody. It directly leads to the detentions and deportation of our family, neighbors, and friends. We call upon the sheriff to stop deporting our neighbors and separating families. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Good evening. My name is Rahma Abdi. I'm the Director of Organizing and Campaign with the Partnership for Advancement of New Americans. The San Diego Sheriff Department is helping DHS and ICE to deport people by telling them when individuals are released from jail and allowing them to speak to detainees. This undermines Sheriff Department's duty to keep everyone in the San Diego County safe. Since 2018, 679 community members, including families, have been deported due to this collaboration. In 2023, 178 community members were affected. San Diego Sheriff Departments involved in joint operation with DHS and ICE, sharing information and using county resources without transparency. DHS, ICE, and Border Patrol have history of mistreating and deporting people in our community and causing fears. This collaboration creates fear and mistrust in local law enforcement and government, making people reluctant to seek help from the county. We demand that Sheriff Department stop sharing information, data, and resources with DHS, ICE, and keep our families together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Lee. I'm with the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. I'm also a former resident of San Diego. My Chinese immigrant family continues to live there and has built roots in San Diego for over 30 years. I'm saddened and appalled that my hometown continues to treat immigrants unequally, and I'm saddened that immigrants continue to be singled out or scapegoated for issues that have nothing to do with their place of birth. The people who are transferred to ICE do not exist in isolation. As Robert Vivar so powerfully shared earlier, they're connected to families and communities. And this unequal system of justice in San Diego perpetuates cycles of violence that subject people to ICE detention, where there is no right to counsel, where abuse and medical neglect is systemic, and where people are subjected to traumatic deportations. I believe that ending San Diego's collusion with ICE and DHS is actually part of the solution towards community safety. It would help people who have survived or witnessed violence to come forward to get the support they need without the fear of deportation. And at the end of the day, I think the county should not be using local resources to collude with ICE, because so many of these resources could instead be invested in housing, jobs, and healthcare to actually build safer communities for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good evening, Chair Vargas and Supervisors. My name is Gianna Giacalone, pronouns she, her, and I'm a resident of District 4 and an ACLU supporter. I'm calling tonight to demand that the San Diego County Sheriff's Department stop all collaboration with DHS agencies to detain and deport our community members. We specifically demand that the SDSO stop responding to all ICE notification and transfer requests. When San Diegans don't live in fear that an encounter with law enforcement will result in deportation, we can create a safer and stronger region. The SDSO's continued collaboration with ICE and Border Patrol threatens the possibility of keeping our loved ones together. The SDSO uses vital county resources to aid U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in detaining and deporting our community members and their loved ones. ICE requests are optional for police to respond to, yet the SDSO actively chooses to use our county dollars to aid ICE in detaining and deporting our community members, and is unwilling to stop. And the number of SDSO responses and transfers to ICE have increased from 2022 to 2023. Real public safety is ensuring that all people can thrive, and immigrants and communities of color know that law enforcement involvement often has extremely harmful impacts and can escalate situations resulting in incarceration, detention, and even deportation, which have lifelong impacts that limit opportunities for all San Diegans to thrive. I urge the San Diego County Sheriff's Department to immediately stop using county resources to respond to ICE requests for notification and transfers, which result in the separation of families and deportation of our community members. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
It's Truth here for my forum again. I considered going in person, and then I decided this forum is actually irrelevant, because I still ask, if everyone crossing the southern border is not even being properly processed like our laws require, then what's the point of this forum? Why do ICE or the sheriffs even exist if they can't do their job? Why did the state pass the Truth Act only to throw the point of it into the garbage? There's basically not even a southern border anymore, so what's to talk about? But since this is the business of redundancy and obsoleteness, here's again a refresher on last year's forum. There was an emotional disruption that resulted in an early ending of the meeting that cheated almost everyone out of their opportunity to speak. Nora was left with seemingly no choice but to reschedule the forum for the next morning at 9 a.m. And that, despite the fact that she went out of her way to try to calm the situation. That was not captured on the video. And what else pretty much nobody knows is that I tried to help too after her. Nora didn't know anything, and I didn't know anything. Point is, I'm glad that no one's speaking time has been sacrificed again, just the same as I do not enjoy seeing any unnecessary violence from deputies. Basic respect of each other is not much to ask for. And I would appreciate if those running the county of contradictions in collusion with the sellout sheriff would also show respect and stop enabling human trafficking and all the other crimes that go along with it that ICE has reported, including attempted murder, domestic violence, child pornography, child molestation, and now rape of children. It's worth every penny to transfer those criminals out of our communities. It's more affordable than a $20 million migrant shelter, plus the organizations that are getting rich off an open border, organizations like the ACLU, the ADL, Catholic Charities, the IRC, Jewish Family Services, and SBCS. Criminals and traitors everywhere, except the 3,236 counties in the country that do allow ICE transfers. So trust that I'll bring values, transparency, and truth to tomorrow with criminals too.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mustafa Azami, and I'm with PANA, the Partnership for the Advancement of the Americans. DHS, ICE, and Border Patrol have a long story of harassing and abusing our community members, reporting our neighbors, separating families, and creating a climate of fear in immigrant communities. San Diego Sheriff Department prison where DHS create fear and mistrust of local law enforcement and local government, meaning community members are less likely to call county when they need access to vital county services. Therefore, I'm demanding the Board of Supervisors to stop the sheriff from transferring individuals to ICE and notifying ICE when individuals are released from jail, and stop allowing DHS, ICE access to county property, including parking lots, and stop sharing information, data, and resource with DHS. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item. And through the chair, we'll now hand the floor to our Sheriff's Department to answer questions from any members of any public speakers. And then following that, we'll answer questions from that were submitted by the public. Okay, all right, we will move on to the community question and answer. On behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, we provided a space to the public to submit questions, and we received numerous questions. On behalf of the Chairwoman, I'll read the questions. I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes like we've done in the past to answer for the question and answer session. And when we get to the end of the 30-minute timer, then we'll end the questions. Sheriff Martinez, I'll start with the first question that was submitted by the public in advance. There are 5 people who self-reported their place of birth as the United States in the 2023 transfer reporting data from the Sheriff's Department. How does the Sheriff's Department ensure these individuals are not U.S. citizens? And how does the Sheriff's Department ask people about their place of birth?
I'm going to ask Liliana to answer that question. Thank you.
Upon booking, an interview is conducted with the incarcerated person to obtain personal and demographic information. During this process, the individual is asked for their place of birth and citizenship per statute, and if they would like for us to contact their foreign consulate regarding their arrest.
Next question, where do the notifications of intent to notify, the J-340 numbers come from in the 2023 transfer reporting data? The Sheriff's Department reported receiving 1,059 I-247A requests from ICE in 2023 and only approved 185 of those, yet the department still issued the J-340 intent to notify form 1,049 times. Explanation of these numbers would be very helpful.
The Form J-340 is created when a request for notification is received from ICE. This form is used to screen an individual's criminal history to determine if there are qualifying convictions and/or charges in accordance with SB 54. The approval or rejection of ICE notifications are recorded on the J-340 form, and in all instances, a copy is provided to the incarcerated person per state law. We received 1,059 requests. However, the numbers differ by 10 because those 10 individuals were already released from custody before a J-340 notification was completed and issued. Therefore, ICE was not notified.
The next question reads, the County Board of Supervisors must immediately stop ICE transfers and stop using county resources to aid in the separation of families and deportation of community members. We are tired of the overwhelming presence of an agency that lacks transparency and continues to violate our human rights.
That sounds like more of a comment than a question, but thank you.
The next question has 7 parts to it, so I'll read each one individually, and I'll allow you to respond to each part. First one, the Sheriff's 2023 Truth Act statistical reporting form shows the Sheriff is still responding to ICE detainers or hold requests, even though ICE holds are prohibited under SB 54. Why is the Sheriff still responding to ICE detainers?
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. What is being referenced here is the I-247 form. This form is a document that is submitted by ICE. We as a Sheriff's Department have no jurisdiction or ability to modify the language on the form, such as the term detainer or hold. What is important for the public to know is that the Sheriff's Department does not process or recognize this request as a hold or a detainer, but we treat it as a request for notification of release. Further, we only honor this type of form request if it meets the requirements of SB 54. This confusion was brought to our attention by our community advocates this month, and we're happy to add a footnote in our publicly available data to clarify what I just described in our reports moving forward.
Next question, next part of the question. We know that the Sheriff releases individuals with the exact convictions as the individuals who are transferred every year. In 2021, we know that the Sheriff released 1,994 individuals with the same convictions as the 18 they transferred. How many U.S. citizens with the exact same convictions as the individuals who were transferred were released on their own recognizance in 2023?
To reiterate, we do not make determinations on whether someone is a U.S. citizen. During the booking process, we ask for a place of birth and other questions related to someone's desire to have a foreign consulate contacted. Therefore, citizenship is self-reported.
Next question, why does the Sheriff choose to transfer individuals to ICE and notify ICE of release dates when they are releasing individuals who are U.S. citizens with the exact same convictions?
Well, I think it's important to explain that when we use the phrase transfer to ICE, we aren't physically handing individuals over to ICE. ICE is made aware of their release date, and should ICE be in the release area when they are discharged, that's what constitutes a transfer. We do not hold or detain individuals, nor give them timing details of their release aside from the date. As I mentioned in my closing remarks of the presentation, I recognize the importance of protecting the rights of individuals, including our undocumented immigrant community. Part of protecting these rights is the right of all communities to feel safe, especially for those who are victims of crime. In talking with my community, specifically those who have immigrants here or have undocumented family members, what brings and attracts them to our country, state, and this county is a life of opportunity and order, meaning they embrace the respect, the laws that are in place protect their safety and their quality of life. It's conversations like those that reiterate the importance of balancing those interests with laws that are in place that uphold safety and justice.
Next question, why has the number of joint task forces that the Sheriff sits on with DHS agencies increased?
The number of task forces hasn't necessarily increased. What happens is a shift in priorities and operations during the course of the year. Fentanyl, as everyone knows, has become a priority, so we have shifted some of our task force officers to the FAST task force, which focuses on fentanyl.
Why does the Sheriff continue to transfer individuals to ICE and provide ICE access to individuals without a warrant?
I think I've answered this before. I'm really trying to balance public safety with individual rights.
Under California state law, Border Patrol and ICE are not considered peace officers. Doesn't it create a liability for our sheriff officers to be participating on joint task forces and sharing data with these non-peace officers?
No, of course not. They're federal peace officers, and they have training that's comparable to ours. We work really well together, and we balance what they bring, what their resources are, with our resources to keep our communities safe.
The probation department runs the juvenile detention facilities for the county. Does county probation also transfer individuals to ICE and notify ICE of release dates? Is ICE also present in the juvenile facilities?
That's not my jurisdiction. I'll defer to Holly.
The answer to both questions is no, and they've had no ICE transfers in the 7 years that we've been having Truth Act forums.
The next question also has several parts. Again, I'll read each part individually. Our county has already expressed the desire to stop all ICE notifications and transfers that lack a judicial warrant in the board's vote to support the Vision Act. What are the cumulative costs resulting from the sheriff's continuing practice of voluntary ICE transfers in terms of staff time, resources, as well as the loss of public trust in local law enforcement and its negative impact on safety?
Thank you. The Sheriff's Department has been statutorily following the law with the notifications and transfers. I don't have a mechanism to carve out the staffing time and associated costs resulting from our department's compliance with state law. In my conversations with San Diego Immigrants' Rights Consortium, I am often presented with the argument that of the spirit of the law as it relates to SB 54 and the ability to stop providing ICE release information. For the past 5 years, there have been multiple attempts at the state level to stop the ability of local jails from transferring individuals or sharing release information to federal immigration custody. All these efforts have failed and been rejected by the state legislature, the Vision Act being one of those attempts. The most recent was a bill last year that would have prohibited CDCR from providing information to ICE regarding release information. That bill made it to the governor's desk, but was vetoed because he felt that it would have impacted public safety risks. He further added that he felt current law balances community trust and cooperation between law enforcement and local communities. I agree with the governor's assessment. While I hear SDIRC's request to follow the spirit of the law, I look to our state lawmakers to continue to reaffirm the letter of the law.
Next question. Like other counties that have halted ICE transfers, San Diego should be a leader in the area of immigrant protections. Could you please comment on why you still have not stopped the voluntary transfers in light of the unnecessary, unjust, and traumatic consequences of ICE transfers on the community members who are transferred and their extended family members, and the broad ripple effect on the entire immigrant community?
Comparing our agency to other sheriff jurisdictions like Los Angeles, Contra Costa, Humboldt, Santa Clara, San Mateo, San Joaquin, or others is just not realistic. Other counties do not have proximity to the border, which reduces the number of people in their custody who might qualify under state law for transfer. We are seeing unprecedented activity occurring on our border. Each and every day, the Sheriff's Department works hard to ensure cross-border and organized criminal activity do not impact public safety. We are experiencing real threats to our communities, including fentanyl and other illicit drug trafficking, human trafficking, and violent crimes. Every year, crimes such as child abuse, child molestation, sex crimes, drug trafficking, and domestic violence victimize community members. Even when someone has completed their sentence, we see recidivism with these types of crimes. This year's transfer list reflects that out of the 25 individuals, 10 of them were in our custody for a similar crime they committed in the past that was a qualifying conviction per state law. As I mentioned last year, as a sheriff, I can legally prevent these offenders from re-victimizing our communities, and I will.
Next question. State law holds that our county facilities and other resources should not be used for federal immigration purposes. Are the parking lots of the jails considered county property? If so, why are ICE and other DHS agencies allowed in them to conduct arrests?
Jail parking lots are open to the public. While we have heard of ICE agents being in the public parking lots in the past, I've not heard of any events taking place since I have been the sheriff. Transfers take place within the final release area of each facility, and ICE would have to go into the public information lobby to sign in as a professional visitor. As a reminder, they only receive the date of release and not a specific time frame.
Is the sheriff still sharing and or receiving resources from DHS, as was the case last year? If so, could you please provide a complete accounting of all resources received, provided, and shared, grants, funding, equipment, data sharing, including through third-party agencies, joint task force agreements, etc.?
With this question, I'm not really sure what the requester is referencing when they mention resources. Since I can't answer the question now, I would invite them to submit a Public Records Act request to see if they can specify what they're referencing.
Next question. Our county government has already made a commitment to fair and equitable treatment of immigrants in our region. For example, Immigrant Defense Fund, OIRA, OERJ, and other benefits. The continuation of ICE notifications and transfers doesn't fit this framework of equity and justice. Will you commit to halting the notifications and transfers tonight?
While I also agree with fair and equitable treatment of immigrants in our region, I disagree with the statement that my stance of this matter doesn't fit within the framework of equity and justice. Many of our immigrant community members come from a country of war or corruption. They view San Diego County as that opportunity for them to achieve a quality of life that seeks to support their ability to thrive. They directly tell me it is because of laws and protections in place that they find comfort and safety in our communities.
Next question, is there a process of accountability regarding policies and practices included in the MOUs between the San Diego Sheriff's Office and federal agencies? Could you please provide access to the MOUs? What mechanisms for reporting and independent oversight are in place, and what are the consequences for violations?
If an agency violates SB 54, it would be a violation of the government code. A violation of SB 54 can be reported to the Attorney General's office, and our task forces know that we are held to high standards in complying with SB 54. Therefore, there is a clear delineation of task force roles to not cross any immigration enforcement. If sheriff personnel violate SB 54, that could result in a potential misdemeanor prosecution of the individual. And if anyone's interested in our MOUs, I invite them to, again, submit a public records request, and we'll provide those.
Thank you. And the final question, per the Truth Act Statistical Report 2023, the total I-247A approved requests and the I-247A rejected requests add up to 1,059. But the chart indicates the Sheriff's Department prepared 1,049 J340s. Why would 10 of the I-247A forms not have also resulted in a generated J340?
This was answered in the first question. Again, we received 1,059 requests. However, the numbers differ by the 10 because of those 10 individuals were already released from sheriff's custody before the J340 form could be completed and issued to them. Therefore, ICE was not notified.
And that concludes the questions that were submitted from the public to the sheriff. We'll now, on behalf of Chairwoman Vargas, turn it to any of her colleagues that have questions, starting with Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much. Chair, thank you for hosting this annual forum. To the community, thank you for coming. Sheriff Martinez, thank you for being here. I think that your engagement, Sheriff, with the immigrant and refugee community throughout the year is necessary. My concern is a concern that we heard of the public that if there is any distrust in law enforcement, then we are at risk of not living in a safe place, because we do have folks who have individual situations. We want them to feel safe to call law enforcement. So I heard that loud and clear from community members, among other things. I want to ask you, Sheriff, about something in your presentation. Well, first, let me go back. The first question that the clerk asked about the country of origin in the chart in your presentation. Can you ask that question one more time? And can you answer it one more time? I don't think I understood the answer to
The question read, there are 5 people who self-reported their place of birth as the United States in the 2023 transfer reporting data from the Sheriff's Department. How does the Sheriff's Department assure these individuals are not U.S. citizens? And how does the Sheriff's Department ask people about their place of birth?
Yes.
So when an individual comes into sheriff's custody during the booking process, we do ask certain personal and demographic questions, and it's during that process that we ask them where their place of birth is. We also ask another question about citizenship, and at that point, we ask them about their citizenship as well. As a follow-up to that question, we will also ask them if they want us to contact their foreign consulate if they are not U.S. citizens. So that actually takes place during that booking process interview.
Okay, so based on the question, those who have self-reported the place of birth to be the U.S. and they are still on this list for an ICE transfer, what is the determination for that? How do we get there?
So their citizenship is self-disclosed, it's self-reported.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't look into this after it's self-reported. We, as a department, do not look into their citizenship to validate that. It is all self-reported information.
So I guess my question is, how are they on the, I mean, this is just maybe something I don't understand, but how are they then on the list? What I'm thinking is what it seems like is that maybe there is an assumption made that maybe they're not U.S. citizens, but I don't know that to be true, right? It may be something I'm misunderstanding. I just want to know how they end up on this list.
If I'm understanding correctly, this is how ICE becomes aware of that, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just, because this is the transfer reporting list, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think from my count, people on this list that have been transferred using this system that we're allowed to, but it says they're self-reported as U.S., as being born in the USA.
I wouldn't be able to speak on ICE's behalf on how they identify that. I can only speak to what the department does on our end.
Okay. Okay. I would love to talk to someone that you communicate with from ICE to see how they determine that. It really stands out to me, and it was the very first question that was asked, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to ask one of my questions, but I asked it anyway, so apologies for that. Okay, last question is just based on the PowerPoint. States SB 54 prohibits local law enforcement from holding individuals based on federal immigration detainers or transferring them into federal custody unless they've been convicted in the last 15 years for one of the list of 31 crimes or are a registered sex offender. And if not, they may only be held with a warrant from a federal judge. Based on one of the presentations from the SDIRC, it points out the distinction between those convicted of a felony and then those convicted of a misdemeanor. I want to know if the Sheriff's Department accounts for this distinction between misdemeanors and felonies when deciding whether or not to cooperate with ICE.
So you're wondering if we notify ICE, do we base it on the type of crime?
Well, the California Government Code Section 7282.5, A3 states that an individual must have been convicted within the last 15 years of a felony for one of the 31 listed offenses. But if it's a misdemeanor, that time frame is within 5 years. I'm just wondering if I'll take that into consideration.
Of course, we follow the law. If it's 5 years for a misdemeanor, we don't look at anything beyond 5 years and 15 years for a felony.
Okay. The way it's reflected here, I wasn't clear as to whether you take that into account, but thank you for answering that question. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Sheriff and team, for being here and being so willing to answer questions. And thank you to everyone in the public who came. And, there's a lot of folks who've already left, but appreciate the attention to this issue that's really important for our community. So thank you for being here and sharing your concerns and asking your questions. I had some questions, wanted to better understand some of sort of the procedural ways that this sort of works, that the ICE transfers work. So I understand that please correct me if I'm wrong. So my understanding, right, is, it's the citizenship is self-reported by the individuals. Then that's like one bucket, right, if they say that they're, not a U.S. citizen. And then the second bucket is that they had some kind of violation or crime that would then allow ICE transfers that would be outside of SB 54 protections. So I wanted to better understand how we verify, how the Sheriff's Department looks at what documents that are looked at to verify that the specific crime falls outside of those SB 54 protections.
You mentioned the documents themselves.
Yeah, what do you look at? Like, what is, just to better understand, like, unpack that process. Like, how are you verifying that? Like, what are you looking up to find out that they're have committed or been convicted of a crime?
So we're accessing the criminal history information when we're doing that review.
So those are law enforcement databases that contain the criminal history information, and then their identification is verified to make sure that it's the same individual that has the criminal
Like a fingerprint or whatnot to match the person. Okay, thank you. That's super helpful.
You're welcome. Sure.
And then is there any sort of double check or legal oversight when the transfers are made to kind of make sure these two boxes are checked? Right, these two criteria are checked. So,
we keep the record, but we're happy to do an audit of our records if DOJ or someone wants to do that.
You mean like post facto? But at the time, there's not like a double check, but we do have the records, so we can kind of go back and look.
For the individual themselves that qualifies per SB 54, there is a re-verification that's done prior to release by our staff.
Okay. But yes, exactly the question I'm asking. So that basically you have some person who's like your initial sheriff who does this assessment, and then somebody else double checks it.
That's correct. That's a re-verification done by our jail population management unit.
Okay, and then I think I had one other question. Thank you. It's very, very helpful. Oh, here was the question. Would it be feasible to, I mean, this is great, right? Like, I think this Truth Act form is really helpful, right? This kind of opportunity for the public to find out what's going on. Would it be possible to post monthly data in a more real-time update as opposed to folks waiting for the annual?
We could take a look at that, but probably it's just hard to accumulate that data and do it monthly.
I think even if it was quarterly, I think even quarter. I mean, I think.
Yeah, we continue to have those conversations with the Immigrants' Rights Consortium and folks like that. So we'll continue having those conversations.
Because I find this very helpful. So thank you. And I think the more that there's communication, I think to my colleague's point, that sort of work to build trust, I think is really important for everyone to feel safe. So
thank you. Thanks, Supervisor.
Thank you. Chairwoman Vargas has several questions. I'll go ahead and pull those questions up on the screen. First question reads, we have heard concerns from the community about the techniques being used in their attempt to comply with ICE requests for transfers. Can you please explain the procedures of the Sheriff's Department in terms of immigration policy? And follow up on the screen there. Based on the procedures you described, would you be able to elaborate the criteria used to approve transfer requests to ICE?
Operationally speaking, again, once we receive a notification request from ICE via the I-247 form, our jail population management unit screens the form to approve or reject based on their criminal charges or prior convictions. This data is, my apologies, this information is provided to the incarcerated person in written form via the J340 form. We also provide this same type of notification once a release date is obtained via the J335 form operationally. And if we are asked to, by ICE, if they would like to interview someone, we also have that via the J330 form. In all cases, an incarcerated person can choose to release a copy of these forms to an attorney or a designated person. What ends up happening on the back end is if a notification is approved, prior to release, a re-verification, like I mentioned before, will be done by our jail population management unit. And we can make the notification to immigration based on their release date. We don't make any type of arrangements or scheduling regarding, and we do not delay a person's release. We simply notify ICE and let them know they are being released on that day.
Next question. During 2023, was there any case where an individual was transferred without a judicial warrant or a qualifying conviction per state law? If so, what was the process to determine this case?
We wouldn't have anyone.
Next Next question. As a county, we have already made a commitment to immigrants in our region by creating the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, funding the Immigrant Rights Legal Defense Program, and providing funding to help asylum seekers arriving in San Diego. There are concerns from the community that when the sheriff allows ICE access to county property, including the jails and parking lots, people are afraid to access county resources and locations for services like vaccines and the legal defense program. What information, if any, is shared with ICE prior to the release of immigrant detainees from county custody?
Yeah, just as we've said before throughout the presentation, it's just the date of the release. We don't give them any specifics other than that.
Next question. Does the Sheriff's Department facilitate the use, either formally or informally, of county property, such as jails, parking lots, office space, et cetera, for investigative interviews and other ICE interactions with immigrant in county custody?
We do not. If they do ask for an interview, they have to access via the primary entrance point like any other law enforcement agency and provide their government ID and sign in for an interview.
Not seeing any additional requests for questions from the supervisors. Chairwoman Vargas has closing remarks on the screen. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the Truth Act Forum this evening. Your voices are key to this forum. As advocates, you do this work every day, and coming here and participating in this forum opens up deep wounds for so many. Thank you for sharing your stories and the impact policies have on members of our communities. Thank you, Sheriff Martinez and her team, for responding to the community questions and asking that we work together with advocates to truly meet the spirit of the Truth Act. To our community, I hear you loud and clear. Per your request, I will be introducing a resolution to our Board of Supervisors to ensure we are consistent with and advance the intent of the California Values Act and the Truth Act into county policies and procedures for handling requests for information and cooperation from ICE. I look forward to working on developing a resolution to be introduced this summer to address some of the concerns voiced today. This resolution aims to align our policies with our values, ensuring that San Diego remains a region where everyone can thrive regardless of their origin. You have my commitment to building a healthier, safer, and stronger San Diego. Thank you for attending today's Truth Act Forum. This concludes the items before the board. With that, this session is adjourned. The board will reconvene for the land use session of this meeting tomorrow, May 22nd, 2024 at 9 a.m.